The wind howled like a wounded beast across the frozen pines of the Oregon wilderness. Snow blanketed everything in white silence, muffling even the sound of footsteps, if there were any to hear. But she was running. Through the storm. Alone. Her name was Vivienne Carter, heiress to the Carter industrial empire. Elegant, brilliant, and born into everything money could buy, except safety. Not tonight. Vivienne's breaths came in shallow gasps, each one a ghost escaping into the icy air. Her designer coat, now torn and soaked, was hardly meant for survival. Her black leather gloves were gone, lost in the chaos when the black SUV veered off the road and the shots rang out behind her. She didn't even know who the men were. Only that someone wanted her dead. She stumbled through the woods, her legs numb, her vision flickering at the edges. Snowflakes clung to her lashes like delicate spiders. And then, darkness. Her knees buckled. The last thing she saw was the snow rushing up to meet her. Miles away, deep in the heart of the forest, Luke Maddox swung his axe one last time. The log split clean. He wiped sweat from his brow, despite the cold, and loaded the last few pieces of wood onto the sled. Tall, rugged, and solitary, Luke lived alone in a cabin built by his father. It was the life he chose after the war, after everything fell apart. As he hitched the sled to his snowmobile, something in the distance caught his eye, an odd shape slumped in the snow just off the trail. He frowned. A deer? No, not a deer. A person. He left the sled and ran. Vivienne lay like a fallen angel, hair splayed in a halo of chestnut against the snow. Her skin was pale, almost blue. Her lips trembled with the last warmth leaving her body. Her face, striking even in its fragility, looked oddly familiar. But that didn't matter now. Hey, can you hear me? He called out, kneeling beside her. No response. He didn't hesitate. Scooping her up in his arms, he carried her back to the snowmobile, wrapped her in his coat, and gunned the engine toward his cabin. The storm was picking up, and if he hadn't found her... He glanced down at her face. Something about her stirred a memory, a headline. She wasn't just anyone. He was sure of it. Inside the cabin, the fire roared to life. He laid her gently on the couch and began rubbing her hands to warm them. He found her phone in her coat. It was smashed. Her purse was gone. She stirred. Her eyelashes fluttered. Where? Her voice was hoarse. You're safe, Luke said gently. You're in my cabin. You were freezing to death out there. Her eyes flew open. Panic. No, they're coming. They're going to find me. He put a hand on her shoulder. Who's coming? She tried to sit up but winced in pain. I can't stay here. You have to let me go. You're not going anywhere until I know what's going on. There was a pause. Then her eyes locked onto his. For a moment, neither of them said a word. My name is Vivienne Carter, she whispered. And someone tried to kill me tonight. Luke stared at her. The name hit him like a jolt. Vivienne Carter. The billionaire's daughter. Reported missing just hours ago on the news. He stepped back slowly, eyes narrowing. What the hell did you get yourself into? And outside, in the silent forest, tire tracks began to fill with falling snow. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting golden light across the log walls of Luke's cabin. Outside, the storm screamed like a chorus of wolves, but inside, it was warm. Almost safe. Vivienne sat wrapped in a thick wool blanket, a steaming mug of herbal tea in her trembling hands. Her fingers were red from the cold, but slowly regaining color. She looked around the room, solid oak furniture, old books on the shelf, and a rifle hanging above the mantel. The place was small, neat, and isolated. Perfect for hiding. Luke stood near the window, peering into the blizzard, every muscle taut. His jaw clenched slightly, a quiet tension beneath his rugged exterior. He didn't ask her more questions, yet. He was giving her space to breathe. To speak. Vivienne broke the silence. They followed me. After the fundraiser, I noticed the car behind me. Same one as yesterday. Black SUV. No plates. Luke turned. You ran them off the road? Tried. They shot at my driver. Her voice cracked. He swerved off a bridge. I think he's dead. I ran into the woods. I didn't have a plan. Just instincts. He walked over, crouching by the couch to meet her eyes. Do you know who they were? No, she said, shaking her head. But it wasn't random. Someone arranged this. Someone who knew my route, my habits. This was planned. Luke studied her carefully. You said your name's Vivienne Carter. That's not a name people forget. You're all over the news right now. Her lips tightened. Let me guess. Spoiled heiress missing after extravagant charity gala. Something like that. He gave a one-shoulder shrug. Close enough. Vivienne gave a bitter laugh, then winced and touched her ribs. I'm not as fragile as I look. Luke grabbed a small kit from the shelf and gently sat beside her. Let me see, he said, voice calm but firm. She hesitated, but then nodded, lifting the blanket and part of her blouse to reveal bruised skin. A long purpling mark ran along her left side. He frowned. Could be a cracked rib. You need a doctor. No, she said quickly. I can't. Not yet. Whoever's behind this, they have reach. If I go to a hospital, they'll find me. Luke looked at her for a long time. Then you stay here. At least until the storm clears. Vivienne's eyes softened. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Luke stood up and went back to the fire. Because I've seen what happens when people look the other way. She tilted her head, watching him. Military? Used to be, he said, tossing another log on the fire. Special forces. Afghanistan. Now I cut wood for a living and keep to myself. Vivienne nodded slowly. You're good at reading people. He turned to her. And you? You're good at hiding something. Vivienne didn't answer. Not yet. Later that night, after a simple dinner of hot stew and bread, Luke gave her his bed and took the couch. But sleep did not come easily for either of them. Vivienne lay under heavy quilts, staring at the ceiling. Her mind raced, images of the crash, the gunfire, her driver slumped over the wheel. And behind it all, a shadow. A familiar one. There was only one person she suspected. Uncle Graham. Her father's brother. After her father died last year, Graham had taken over most of the Carter business empire as temporary CEO, until Vivienne turned 30 and took full control. Which was in exactly 2 weeks. 2 weeks left to live, apparently. Downstairs, Luke sat in the dim glow of the fire, sipping black coffee. He had placed his old service pistol on the table beside him. Years of instinct told him something wasn't right, not just about her story, but about this entire night. The power had gone out twice already. Then the sound. Not the wind. A crunch outside. Footsteps. He moved silently, sliding to the window. Visibility was poor. Whiteout conditions. But there, barely, a set of headlights in the far distance, approaching slowly down the forest trail. No one should have been out here. Not at this hour. Not in this storm. He crept upstairs, knocked softly, then opened the bedroom door. Vivienne, he whispered. She sat up instantly, heart pounding. We've got company. Together, they crouched by the front door, lights off, watching. The SUV had stopped about 50 yards from the cabin. No movement. No one came out. Vivienne's breathing grew shallow. That's them. I know that car. Luke handed her a small revolver. Do you know how to use this? She hesitated, then took it with a nod. My father taught me. Stay down. No matter what. He slipped out the back door like a shadow, disappearing into the woods behind the cabin. He circled wide, rifle in hand, every step deliberate. He moved through snow as if it made no sound. As he drew closer to the SUV, he saw 2 figures inside. They were scanning the area with flashlights, but not coming out. They were waiting. Luke's eyes narrowed. This wasn't an ambush. It was a message. Or bait. He pulled back, returned quietly to the cabin. They're not attacking, he said. Not yet. They're watching. Why? I don't know. But they'll either move at dawn or come for us during the night. Vivienne looked up at him. Then we can't stay here. No, Luke said grimly. And if you want to survive this, Vivienne, we're going to have to figure out exactly what they want. And why they want you dead. The pause. Vivienne met his gaze. Then I need to tell you everything. The storm had quieted, but the air outside remained a frozen silence. Snow clung to the trees like ash from some ancient fire, and the distant hum of the black SUV's engine still lingered faintly in the background like a predator waiting for its prey to stir. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled low. Vivienne sat cross-legged on a wool blanket near the hearth, the revolver resting in her lap like a sleeping animal. Luke stood nearby, cleaning his rifle, every motion precise. Neither spoke until the fire popped, sending a single ember dancing across the stone floor. Vivienne took a breath. My father didn't just run a company. He built a legacy, one that some people would do anything to steal. Luke looked up, waiting. He died last year in a supposed accident. His private plane went down in the Rockies. They said it was weather-related. But I never believed that. My father was meticulous. He never flew without double-checking every detail. Luke nodded slowly. And you think someone sabotaged it? I know someone did. She leaned forward, voice low. And now they're coming after me because I'm the last link in their way. Luke sat across from her, the firelight catching the shadows beneath his eyes. Who? She hesitated. Uncle Graham. After my father died, he stepped in to stabilize the company. Said I was too emotional to make decisions. Too young. I played along, let him think he was in control. But I started investigating. Secretly. And you found something? She nodded. There's an offshore account. Massive sums moved into it through shell companies that don't exist. Bribes. Payoffs. Laundering. Graham's using Carter Holdings to fund something dark, illegal arms, maybe even mercenary work. I don't have all the pieces yet, but I'm close. Luke leaned back. So what happened at the gala? I confronted one of the board members. Slipped him a file. He was supposed to meet me this morning and hand over the rest of the evidence. He never showed. And then, they came after me. Luke looked toward the window, jaw tight. You realize this isn't just about money anymore. If they're willing to kill for it, they won't stop. Especially not if they know you're alive. Vivienne looked down. I didn't mean to drag you into this. He gave a small, dry chuckle. Too late for that. Silence stretched between them. And then softer. Thank you, she said. For saving me. Luke's eyes met hers. There was something unreadable there, something quiet but fierce. Don't thank me yet. We're not out of this. That night, Vivienne couldn't sleep. She sat by the window wrapped in a quilt, watching snow drift down in slow, glowing spirals beneath the moonlight. The SUV had vanished sometime after midnight, disappearing back down the trail. But its absence was more unsettling than its presence. She was beginning to realize that isolation could be just as dangerous as exposure. Luke appeared behind her, holding 2 mugs of coffee. You don't sleep much either? She asked with a faint smile. Not for years. They sat in silence for a moment, sipping coffee, staring into the white abyss beyond the glass. What made you come out here? She asked finally. Luke leaned against the window frame. After the war, I couldn't handle people anymore. Noise. Politics. Cities. I bought this land, built the cabin myself. Thought I'd find peace. Did you? He shrugged. Sometimes. On quiet nights. When the wind doesn't howl like gunfire. Vivienne looked at him with newfound softness. You lost people. He nodded once. Too many. Another pause. I didn't expect to feel safe here, she said quietly. But I do. He looked at her, really looked at her. That's dangerous. Getting comfortable. Vivienne smiled, but there was sadness behind it. I've never had anyone protect me before. Not like this. And just for a heartbeat, something passed between them. Something unspoken. The next morning, Luke loaded supplies into an old Jeep covered in snow. The cabin was no longer safe. They needed to move. We're heading to a ranger outpost about 30 miles west, he said. There's an old friend of mine stationed there. Ex-military. If anyone can get us secure communication and backup, it's him. Vivienne climbed into the Jeep, her breath misting in the cold air. You trust him? With my life. Luke handed her a map. We'll go off-road most of the way. It'll take longer, but it's safer. Stay alert. The Jeep roared to life, tires crunching over snow as they left the cabin behind. The forest closed in like a white cathedral, towering pines dusted with ice. Vivienne stared out the window, lost in thought. Every so often, she'd glance at Luke. There was something about the way he moved, the way he listened, like he could hear threats in the silence. Like the forest whispered to him. Hours passed. They crossed frozen streams and winding ridgelines. The sun was low in the sky when Luke suddenly braked. Vivienne's head snapped up. What is it? Luke pointed. Tire tracks. Fresh ones. Not theirs. He got out, crouched beside them, then stood with a grim expression. They're following us. Somehow they knew the route. Vivienne's blood ran cold. We have to keep moving. No, he said. We have to disappear. They took a sharp detour, abandoning the trail, plunging deeper into the wilderness. The Jeep bounced over rough terrain until Luke stopped near an old, abandoned mining shack half buried in snow. This place hasn't been used in decades, he said. We'll camp here for the night. They'll lose us in the terrain if we're lucky. The shack creaked in the wind. Inside, it was dark, dusty, and smelled of rusted tools and oil. But it was shelter. That night, Vivienne sat beside Luke near a small campfire they built inside an old fireplace. He passed her a ration bar and a flask of whiskey. She took a sip and coughed. God, that's strong. He smirked. You'll get used to it. She looked at him, firelight flickering across his face. What if we don't make it? Luke looked back at her, his voice quiet. Then we make damn sure we go down fighting. Vivienne exhaled shakily. I wish I had more time. There's so much I wanted to do. So much I never said. Then say it now. She hesitated. Then, softly, I was always afraid of being alone. Even in a room full of people. But right now, here with you, I don't feel alone. Luke didn't respond right away. Then he reached out, gently took her hand. You're not, he said. Outside, in the shadows of the trees, a camera lens zoomed in on the shack. A red light blinked once. Then silence. A voice over a hidden radio whispered, We found them. And from the trees, two men began moving forward, guns drawn. Snow fell heavier that night, blanketing the world in a suffocating silence. Inside the abandoned mining shack, the fire had dimmed to embers, casting flickers of orange across the cracked walls and broken tools. Vivienne dozed lightly against Luke's shoulder, her breathing slow, steady, finally at rest. Luke, however, didn't sleep. His senses were on edge. Years of military instinct warned him, they're coming. He rose slowly, gently laying Vivienne down on the blanket. She stirred, mumbling his name, but he only placed a hand on her arm. Stay here, he whispered. Don't make a sound. Without another word, he moved to the door, silent as snowfall, rifle in hand. The woods beyond were unnaturally still. No birdsong. No wind. Just snowflakes and the kind of quiet that meant something terrible was waiting. Luke crouched just outside the shack, scanning the treeline. His breath formed clouds in the air, and his heart beat like a distant drum. Then he saw it. A laser sight, red and thin like a thread of blood, danced briefly across a nearby pine. Sniper! Luke rolled to the side just as a shot cracked through the night. The bullet exploded through the shack's wooden wall, just inches above Vivienne's sleeping form. Get down, he roared, diving back inside. Vivienne jolted awake with a scream as Luke tackled her, shielding her body with his. More bullets tore through the rotting boards, spraying splinters. They found us, she gasped, terror in her voice. No shit, he snapped, crawling to the overturned table. He dragged it upright to form makeshift cover. We need to move. Now. Vivienne grabbed the revolver, hands trembling, but her eyes, those sharp, sea-glass eyes, were full of fire. Luke kicked open the back door, leading into the dark woods. Run! The forest was alive with shadows and breathless fear. Snow crunched beneath their boots, and tree branches whipped against their faces as they plunged into the frozen undergrowth. Shots rang out behind them, echoing like thunder in the pines. They're flanking us, Luke growled. They're trying to herd us east. Then let's go west. Vivienne shouted, ducking under a fallen log. They cut sharply left, zigzagging through narrow ravines and frost-covered rock formations. Luke led her down a steep slope toward a narrow gorge he remembered from years back, a place even experienced hunters avoided. "Where are we going?" she panted. "Somewhere they won't follow." They reached the gorge's edge, icy cliffs dropping 20 feet down to a frozen stream. A fallen tree stretched across like a natural bridge. "You first," Luke ordered. Vivienne hesitated for only a second before crawling across the slick bark. Her breath caught as the tree groaned beneath her weight. When she reached the other side, Luke followed, rifle strapped tight. Halfway across, a bullet snapped into the trunk near his hand. Luke didn't flinch. He dropped to his stomach and slid the rest of the way. Once on the other side, they ran again, this time into a narrow cave hidden behind an outcrop. They collapsed just inside, breathless, backs against the stone. Snow blew in through the opening, but they were alive. For now. Inside the cave, it was cold, damp, and smelled of ancient earth. Luke lit a small survival torch. Flickering shadows danced across the jagged walls. Vivienne pressed her back to the stone, face pale, eyes wide. "Who the hell are these people?" Luke looked at her grimly. "Ex-military. Private. Professional. The kind who don't miss unless they want you scared." Her voice trembled. "Then why haven't they killed us yet?" He looked away. "Because they need something from you. Or from me." Vivienne pulled her coat tighter. "You said we were going to a ranger station." "We still are. But we have to wait until dawn. Crossing that mountain in the dark is suicide." She nodded, rubbing her frozen hands. Luke sat beside her, silent for a moment. Then he looked at her. "You did good back there." She blinked. "I was terrified." He half smiled. "Doesn't matter. You ran when you needed to. You stayed calm. That counts." She looked down, then back at him. "I was calm because of you." He didn't answer, but his eyes softened. In the flickering firelight, the cave seemed to shrink around them, the cold fading just slightly in the warmth between their bodies. Vivienne leaned her head against his shoulder. "I don't know what happens after this. If we survive, if we don't." He wrapped an arm around her. "We will. I've got you." Her fingers laced through his. "And I've got you." Far away, back in the woods, a man stood near the abandoned shack. Tall, broad, wrapped in a black tactical coat. His beard was frosted, his eyes hard as stone. He crouched beside the fresh footprints in the snow, examining them. "They're heading west," he said into a small radio. A voice crackled back. "Orders." The man paused. "Bring them back alive." "But if that's not possible?" A long silence. "Burn the mountain." The cave was silent, except for the slow, steady crackle of the torch. Luke leaned against the rock wall, listening, always listening. Snow muffled the outside world, but his instincts whispered that danger was never far behind. Vivienne stirred beside him, her breath warm against his shoulder. She had fallen asleep not long after whispering that she had him, and though sleep for Luke was a luxury he couldn't afford, her trust lit something inside him he hadn't felt in years. He checked the time on his old military watch. 5:23 a.m. Almost dawn. "We move at first light," he muttered to himself. But just as he began to prepare their packs, Vivienne let out a soft moan, face twisted in distress. "Viv?" he whispered, placing a hand on her cheek. She jolted awake, eyes wide, gasping. "What happened?" he asked. "I saw him," she breathed. "The man chasing me. He was standing in the snow. Watching. But his face, it wasn't normal. It looked like someone had torn the skin and stitched it back wrong." Luke went still. "That's not possible," she whispered. "Right." He didn't answer. Because deep down, he wasn't sure. 2 hours later, they were moving again, climbing along a narrow ridge as the pale morning light crept over the snow-covered pines. The ranger station was still miles away, but Luke knew a shortcut, through an old mining tunnel that cut beneath the mountain. Dangerous, unstable, but it could get them there faster, if they survived the descent. This tunnel, Vivienne glanced at the iced-over entrance ahead, barely visible behind a curtain of vines and frost. "You sure it's safe?" "No," he said. "But it's better than walking into an ambush." They slipped inside, the light quickly vanishing behind them. Luke turned on his flashlight, illuminating rusted rails and shattered timbers. The air was damp and bitter cold. "Stay close," he said, voice echoing. Halfway through they found it. The body, fresh, slumped beside the rail. Vivienne froze. "Oh my God!" It was a man in tactical black, half buried in snow and gravel. A clean shot to the chest. Luke crouched beside the corpse. "I didn't kill him," he muttered. "One of theirs." Vivienne pointed to a patch on the man's sleeve. "That's the same emblem the guy who grabbed me had. A Red Falcon." Luke tensed. Red Falcon. He hadn't heard that name in years. "I used to work for them," he said quietly. "When I left the army, they recruited me. Hired guns. No rules. They did things I couldn't stomach." Vivienne stared at him, shocked. "You were one of them?" "Was," he said. "Until I found out who they really were. I ran. They didn't like that." Vivienne took a shaky breath. "So they're after you too?" Luke nodded. "But this isn't just about me. They're here for something else. Something bigger." He searched the dead man's vest, maps, radio, and a small notebook. He flipped it open. Coordinates. Codes. A list of names. One name was circled in red. Vivienne Moreau. Her face turned pale. "Why is my name there?" she whispered. "I don't know," he said. "But I'm starting to think this wasn't random." Further into the tunnel, they found a strange chamber, once a resting area for miners, now long abandoned. But what shocked them was the massive steel door bolted into the stone. It had no lock, no handle, just a keypad. And on the floor before it, a broken badge. Vivienne picked it up. "Department of Energy?" Luke frowned. "This isn't a mine. It's a government facility." He tried the keypad, but his flashlight caught something on the wall, faded words painted in yellow. "Project Chimera, access restricted." Vivienne took a step back. "What the hell is Project Chimera?" Luke stared at the sealed door. "I think we just found the reason they want you dead." Outside, a black snowmobile roared to a halt near the hidden tunnel entrance. The man in the tactical coat, the one who had given the burn the mountain order, stepped off. He knelt, brushing aside snow, revealing a faint trail of boot prints. He stood and turned to his team. "Call the chopper." They found Chimera. "What if the girl's with him?" a soldier asked. The man smirked. "Then we kill two birds with one flame." He lit a flare and tossed it into the trees. Back in the tunnel, a rumble shook the earth. Snow fell from the ceiling. Loose stones tumbled. Luke pulled Vivienne behind him. "They're collapsing the entrance." "We're trapped," she cried. He looked around desperately, then back at the sealed Project Chimera door. "We have one choice," he said. "But we don't know what's inside. Better the devil we don't know than the one we do." He aimed his rifle at the keypad, fired twice. Sparks flew, the door hissed, and began to slide open. A blast of warm, sterile air rushed out, mixed with something chemical, something unnatural. Behind the door, a massive underground corridor, lit dimly by backup power. Signs of life. And something else. Footsteps. Not from soldiers. From inside. Vivienne's voice trembled. "Luke, we're not alone down here." He held his rifle tight and stepped into the corridor, eyes narrowed. "Let's find out what they've been hiding." The corridor stretched deep beneath the earth, humming with old electricity. Faded security lights flickered overhead as Luke and Vivienne stepped into the hidden facility. Vivienne clutched Luke's hand tightly, her breath fogging in the sterile air. "This place, it feels like a tomb." Luke scanned the space, walls lined with rusted lab doors, shattered glass, and exposed wires. "More like a graveyard," he muttered. And then, as if summoned by the cold truth in his voice, a voice crackled through an old intercom. "Access confirmed. Welcome back, Subject V." Vivienne froze. What did it just say? Luke turned slowly to her. "Vivienne, what does that mean?" She looked pale, as if the memories had been locked away behind some wall her mind had built. But now the wall was crumbling. I don't know, she whispered. But her eyes said otherwise. They moved deeper into the facility. Room after room revealed strange, abandoned experiments, genetic sequencing, cryogenic chambers, and files labeled Project Chimera. In one room, Luke found an old video monitor, surprisingly still functional. He pressed play. A woman in a lab coat appeared on the screen. Her voice was calm. Professional. Subject V shows exceptional cellular regeneration. Memory wipe procedure was successful. We estimate complete integration into society within 6 months. Extraction team scheduled if the subject recalls. The date on the screen, 5 years ago. Vivienne gasped. That's me. Luke turned to her. You were part of this experiment, and they sent you out into the world, watched you. Until you started remembering. She staggered back, gripping the counter. They lied to me. My life, my family, it was all manufactured. They created me. Luke stepped forward, putting his hands on her shoulders. You're not a lab rat. You're not some project. You're human. You saved me in more ways than you know. Tears welled in her eyes. But before she could speak, the ground shuddered. Explosions rocked the corridor. The lights went out, and through the smoke, they came. Armed men in black, Red Falcon insignias glinting. We've got them, the leader barked. Kill the man. Take the girl. But Vivienne didn't run. She stepped forward, eyes glowing faintly now. Her voice calm. Powerful. No, she said. You don't own me anymore. Luke grabbed his weapon, preparing to fight, but Vivienne raised a hand. The lights flickered, and something inside her awakened. A shockwave of energy pulsed outward from her body, sending the soldiers flying. The walls trembled. The air hummed. Luke stared in awe. What was that? Vivienne collapsed to her knees, trembling. It's what they built me for. But I choose what I become now. Luke lifted her up. Then let's get out of here, together. They found the emergency escape tunnel just as the facility began to cave in. Smoke and fire swallowed the past as they ran through snow tunnels and into the light. Outside, the first rays of spring pierced through the trees. Snow was melting. The storm had passed. Vivienne looked back one last time. No more running. Luke took her hand. No. Now, we live. Epilogue, 1 year later. A small cabin on the edge of a forest. Flowers blooming. A garden out front. Smoke curling from the chimney. Vivienne sat on the porch, painting in a notebook. Luke came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. She smiled, leaning into his touch. What are you thinking about? About how lucky I was, he said, to find you in the snow that night. She turned, kissing him softly. You didn't just find me. You brought me back to life. He smiled. And now, she said, taking his hand, we build a real life. No more secrets. No more fear. In the distance, a hawk flew across the sky. But it wasn't red. It was free.